What is up? Happy daylight savings time to everybody that got to sleep in. If you have young kids, you probably didn't get that opportunity. Tim, I see Ron in the chat. Sorry. Like I said, the kids woke up super early. They woke up super early, and it's always a pleasure. But you know what? And I feel like some people are going to be disgusted by this. Got my Christmas mug. Got my Christmas mug. It's that time. Starting with the glasses off. They're actually in my car, Tim, and I just have been too lazy to go get them. This is going to be a relatively quick episode just because one, only a few names were dropped in the chat that people really wanted to hear discussed. Two, Johnny is still being a little tough, so try not to stick my wife with him for too long by her lonesome. Now, when we're going through these, if of course any ideas pop up, drop it in the chat. If any additional players come to mind, throw it in there. And then any start sit questions. But with the start sit questions, just please give their opponent as well, if possible. All right. First up, Devontae Smith. I know, Tim, you dropped a name in. I think it might have been Devontae Smith. Corey dropped one in, and we got two other names. Elijah Moore. That's another one that will be discussed. So Devontae Smith, I know there is the concern and overall, Ron, I know you mentioned this, that with the way that offense runs, you're going to get those dud games. And obviously everybody understands that. The price point, Cordero Patterson, we can throw him on there. Thanks, Greg. So with Devontae Smith, the value that I'm throwing on him is a late 23 first. And we've talked about this countless times with this rookie draft class. If you're looking at it from if I'm going to do a 1-for-1 swap for a draft pick, essentially, is it beneficial to my lineup? Can I bolster my roster by adding the player in that I'm getting for that draft pick 1-for-1? So I have a late 23 first value, but I'm not moving a late 23 first for him, and most likely not doing it the other way either. Devontae Smith, he's in one of those weird situations where he's great if you're not contending because he does have that insulated value, especially with the way this offense has been so high powered, but he's not necessarily giving you the weekly production you're hoping for. But if you look across the board, and whether it's my tiers, whether it's the way you guys have certain players valued, once we get down to those wide receivers that are a late 23 first, super early 23 second value, weekly consistency is a struggle. If you're going for a younger player, like Mike Evans, obviously Amari Cooper, they have been super productive so far this season. But once you get Judy, Dotson, Hollywood injured, looking up a little bit, Garrett Wilson, even Chris Godwin, Deontay Johnson, Drake London, George Pickens, Brandon Ayuk, there's a lack of weekly consistency. So when I'm looking at these wide receivers, I want to know, are they on the field? Are they taking part in running routes? Because we're going to get to a player like Elijah Moore who has just been completely irrelevant. And that's another situation. Like I said, we'll get to it. But with Devontae Smith, route participation, he's 85, 90, 95% each and every week. He has eclipsed 80 yards in 2 games so far this season, and no one will trade you Olave. Well, yeah, because he's been an absolute monster. He's 22 years old and just such a fantastic situation. What do you want, Ron? What do you want? Anyway, back to Devontae Smith. He eclipsed 80 yards in 2 games so far this season. The 2 games that he eclipsed those 80 yards, he had a massive yards after catch per reception of 6.6 and 8.1. So what he's been able to do primarily has been after the catch. Now, one of those games that he eclipsed 80 yards, I think he had like 200 air yards as well, but he was doing it obviously with the air yards and after the catch. So that leads into something where maybe you look to see the defenses that are running more man. And I talked about this with Juju Smith-Schuster because he has done a lot after the catch this year. And you don't really see that too much whenever you're going against primarily a zone defense. So That's one thing to look for, more matchup dependent maybe for Devontae Smith, but 28% target share per route run in 2 of his last 4 games. He only eclipsed that in 1 of his first 4. And we all know how we stumbled out of the gates with Devontae Smith, right? That first week, I think he had like 6% target share, maybe 8. I mean, it was minimal. And there was a lot of concern. But he has shown he's come back, he's been productive, and you're going to have those games where you get 4, 5, 6 points. But again, at that price point, there's a lot of players that fall into that category. And one thing, and we know this with this offense, they are a run first offense, whether it's the running backs. Miles Sanders has been tremendous for fantasy purposes compared to what the expectation was, or Jalen Hurts just running the ball. But we need this team to get into some games where they're going up against an offensive powerhouse. They're going up against somebody that can put up points and they don't get off to that early lead. 33 quarterbacks have played at least 5 games this year. Jalen Hurts ranks 23rd in pass attempts per game at 27. So not all the way at the bottom. We're not talking Justin Fields here, but at 27 pass attempts per game, even if you get a 20% target share, you're at 5.5 targets per game. And let's say you get 3 or 4 receptions off of that. If you don't find the end zone, it's going to be tough. And we even saw that with AJ Brown on Thursday. If he didn't find the end zone, it would have been a very underwhelming game for him. So I wanted to go through and provide some context and some ideas here for folks. I know, we're sitting here week 9, and every trade that is dropped in the chat, Tim, you asked me, why do you keep asking me what side of the trade I'm on? Because there's so many different variables. And whenever you're starting to talk about, okay, I'm contending, okay, I'm not, these are the pieces I want to add into a trade. Like you were looking to, the Carson Wentz was involved in that trade specifically I'm thinking about. And there's certain players that just aren't adding any value to a trade. So many things right now are team dependent. And you'll see in the chat, I say, I throw the scale out there. I say it's fair. And at this point in time, as long as we're getting a fair trade done, if it's benefiting you in achieving your goal and accomplishing, whether you're looking to bolster your lineup or entering a rebuild or just retooling a little bit, then I think it's something we need to pursue. And there's so many trades right now that in the off season, I would have thought, no, I'm not going to do this trade because off season is all about value, right? And we're looking to accumulate that value. But then right now, I want to win. So there's so many teams. I mean, Tim and I got a trade done where I moved pretty much all of my future draft capital in 23 for Travis Kelce and was it Tyler Boyd? Might have been Boyd. I can't remember. But anyway, okay. Back to Devontae Smith. If I have him on a contender and I'm sitting there, and it was Boyd. Okay, thanks, Tim. If I'm sitting there 5-3, maybe 6-3 after this week, and I have Devontae Smith, of course, the ideal scenario is you're shopping him to a team at the bottom of the standings. And that's going to be a theme with several of these players. Can you get a Hopkins plus, Evans or Evans plus, Christian Kirk plus? Then you start to go to the players that people want nothing to do with, but should be productive at least through the remainder of this year. Aaron Jones plus. Now, if you're going out and there's a team at the top of the standings, and this is something that comes up too, constantly, I just say, what's the state of your team? Send me a screenshot of the team you're trying to trade with. If there's a team that is at the top of the standings, it's going to be very unlikely you get any of these done. So right off the bat, you almost cut your trade partners down to 1/4 because the way standings are this year, 5-3, 4-4, 3-5, so many teams are vying for that 6th spot getting into playoffs. It's hard to find teams that are willing to take on these assets that are not going to help them compete. Ron, good for the Eagles to not have to score points. There's one Cowboys game on the Eagles schedule. All the others look pretty good for them. Yeah. Miles Sanders, Jalen Hurts. But again, like from all these other players, and I'll get to it here shortly, but all these other players, there are question marks around them too. So if you're not able to get these high-end producers, you might not want to pivot off of Devontae Smith in general, but I think the price is fair there at that late first because I'm not moving him for an early second. It's a move that doesn't make sense in terms of moving him for a pick or moving a pick for him. Okay, if a team at the top of the some more names, I think you could get something done for like a Derek Carr or Russell Wilson involving Devontae Smith. Now, of course, this is going to be wildly dependent on your league, the league dynamic, how those managers value quarterbacks, because there's some you'll see Carr dumped for peanuts. And then some you're not getting any type of quarterback with potential longevity for any type of discount. But Devontae Smith for Derek Carr, that could make sense depending on the team. And something I would like to explore. I know a lot of people, they're out on any of those mid-tier quarterbacks, and I get it. But we can't just sit here and say, I only want 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. Then we're not going to have any players. We're not going to have any picks either. So, Jack, what's up? Thanks for joining live. But if a team at the top of the standings has Devontae Smith, even if I am also competing, if I have wide receiver depth, if I have pieces that might be able to help that team as a potential trade partner, help them win now, maybe I go my Mike Evans. So pretty much the same guys I mentioned earlier, but flip it. My Mike Evans for Devontae Smith plus. I do think that could get done if you're in a start 3 wide receiver league. Somebody's been sitting there with Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas, how he's going to come back. Now he's on IR. So several of those types of players, or they have players that just aren't producing at the level we thought they were going to, or they were relying on, Deontay Johnson to get more than 10 points per game. Trying to look. Cortland Sutton, maybe underwhelming. So, a quarterback that we should all be buying, Justin Fields. Yeah, we talked about that in the chat yesterday, and it was Ron. I think, was it you, Ron? It was Kenny Pickett in what we believe to be a late first in a 2 quarterback league. So not Superflex, 2 quarterback for Justin Fields. And I believe you ended up pulling the trigger and you were able to pair him with Josh Allen. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, Justin Fields, somebody that we're always tinkering a little bit week to week, game to game, the way scenarios are playing out. You'll see within my tiers a lot of arrows based on the movement, and it's typically up 1, down 1, up 1, down 1. And then essentially when it comes down to it, it's a net 0 because they end up right back where they were. But playing the market is critical, and you're still going to have a lot of managers that are out on Justin Fields. So I don't want to get too far into the weeds on him, but Jack, I completely agree with that one. I know some of my fellow co-hosts, I don't want to name any names, but that leaves us with 2. And I think both of them are on that train. They are anti-Justin Fields, but it's tough for people to be right about everything, right? But Jack, I think we're on the right track there with Justin Fields. All right. So Mike Evans for Devontae Smith plus. If a team needs a running back, and we see the way the market is trending with these running backs that are not 21, 22 years old, I might explore moving my Najee Harris, who I actually moved straight up in a 14-team league for Derrick Henry 2 days ago. And I acquired Derrick Henry because, first of all, that schedule the rest of the season is going to be tremendous for him. But Najee Harris for Devontae Smith plus. That's something that can be done. Hopkins for Devontae Smith. The price tag to acquire Hopkins right now, it's pretty much right around a first. So if I could get Devontae Smith, or maybe even Hopkins in a 3 for Devontae Smith in a 2, remember, and I'm one of these managers, this is the point of the season when we start to see money. We start to see those wins. We see playoffs, championships. And adding DeAndre Hopkins in his, 25 points per game through 2 weeks, might be 26, 27 even, that starts to look more and more appealing. And your people are going to be willing to move a Devontae Smith plus. Geno Smith for Devontae Smith. I think that could get done if somebody needs quarterback help. I've been looking to unload David Montgomery. Can I to him? Can I do David Montgomery and I don't know, maybe a Cordero Patterson? I butcher that name every single time. It rolls right off the tongue like molasses. But David Montgomery and Patterson for Devontae Smith if I'm not contending. And then I would even try to explore George Pickens for Devontae Smith plus, Garrett Wilson for Devontae Smith plus. So it's a move where it's youth for youth, but you're getting the extra ammo to navigate and make moves elsewhere. But also, we're talking about wide receivers that have that hype, but they're also wildly inconsistent week to week. We just came off a game where George Pickens didn't have a catch. So I there's going to be the hype there, a little bit more hype with Chase Claypool. You talk to people and it's like, oh, Claypool's garbage, but then Pickens gets the bump because Claypool gets moved. Make that make sense. All right. Calvo, good morning. Hurst or Likely? If this is is it tight end premium? Is this start sit? I'm assuming it's start sit. I would go Likely. We have Mark Andrews is doubtful. They're going up against the Saints on Monday night. Bateman is out. Demarcus Robinson, most likely, he's labeled questionable, but I think he was limited Friday and out Saturday, or limited Thursday, out Friday, one of those two. I would go Likely. Tim, DK Metcalf or Paris plus Devontae Smith. I went DK Metcalf there. I don't think, for me personally, Paris Campbell's not moving it enough for me. So if that's an opportunity, I want DK Metcalf in that trade scenario. Okay. Spent a lot of time on Devontae Smith. I was like, 20 minutes. No problem. All right. So we'll go through these next few quickly, but Rashad Bateman, the list, Frank, this is something that could become an issue and linger beyond this year. Like, he re-aggravated it and boom, all of a sudden he is put on IR, or maybe he's not on IR yet, but he's done for the season. If I have him on a roster, I'm looking to dump him if contending. And I'm not saying just ship him off for nothing, but if you look in my tiers, I dropped him significantly. But here's the thing with Rashad Bateman, and we talk about this with injuries all the time. This is not an injury that is going to be league altering, really shake up the wide receiver landscape, where we talk about, like, let's say Mahomes or Allen at the quarterback position go down, or Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, knock on wood. Hopefully none of that happens. But let's say one of them were to go down. That is league altering. That really changes things. If you were contending and you have Rashad Bateman on your roster, it's probably not hurting you all that much, but I would still explore opportunities. So some things I have here. You know what? I didn't put any scenarios here moving him off of a contender. And primarily it is because of what I said with how he was providing very little production if you are contending. So you're not missing out much. I have very little interest overall in acquiring him 1-for-1. The package deals that have been discussed in the chat, talk to Eric about this, moving Tyreek off of a non-contender for something like Pittman, Bateman in a 23-second. And I think that's something that could get done. So you're splitting up the higher end asset and getting insulated value overall with Bateman, but then you're getting the upside with Pittman and the additional second. If I'm not contending, I'm also looking to move an aging wide receiver. So Bateman, Devontae Smith, overall, the ideas are the same. Maybe you can move those pieces that you haven't been able to move. If somebody has a Bateman and they're looking to add on, maybe this is a good chance to cash out on a Montgomery, Waller, Ertz, if you're not contending in 2 PPR. Even a Mac Jones. I know he's not appealing right now, but if that gives me an opportunity to move him off of my roster, that's something to explore. I would take any 23 or 24 first for Rashad Bateman. And this is another situation where it doesn't make sense. I'm not going to move one of those picks for Bateman because it's not doing anything for you, and you're just adding on the additional risk. So I know I talked about the insulated value. Like, his value is not going to drop over these next few months, but we don't know if we get a negative blurb once the off season hits, if that team looks to draft another wide receiver. I mean, look at the weapons left there. Mark Andrews is out. Rashad Bateman's out. You have Isaiah Likely. And then we're talking about Demarcus Robinson then being a big loss for this team because they just don't have many weapons there as pass catchers. So I would expect them to bring somebody in. And, Bateman's been putting up 9 points per game. Maybe explore moving your Tyler Lockett, your Curtis Samuel plus a small piece. If you have a league mate that hey, they chase points, they are looking to contend, this is a move that might make sense for them. If a team is at the bottom of the standings and they have Rashad Bateman, I wouldn't spend too much time exploring any opportunities there. Calvo, one more question. Sit one. Jamal Williams. So Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift, Deion Jackson. Jamal Williams, he's in line for a 25 touch day. That Green Bay defense, we always talk about it is a run funnel defense. They look to keep things in front of them. They're not going to get a lot of deep shots against them. And it's very similar to what the Chargers try to do. So I'm going to go Jamal Williams. I'm going to play him. I'm going to play Deion Jackson. With Swift, if he does not find the end zone, you're going to be very disappointed. Like I said in the chat earlier, we might see a 4-catch, 5-catch day out of him with a touchdown. But if we don't get that touchdown, it's going to be very disappointed. And it looks like people agree there. Just sipping out of my Christmas mug here. It's like 70 degrees outside in Pittsburgh. It's very disappointing. Very disappointing. Elijah Moore was another name that popped up. I went from pretty much in line with market when he came into the league. Then I fell below market and I had him as a sell. Then I went to in line with market, almost above market. Now I'm right back in line. And this is what I talk about. Always up, down, up. Elijah Moore, it feels a lot like the Brandon Ayuk situation. Does it not? Productive rookie year. Comes in. You have Garrett Wilson added. You had Deebo Samuel come back from injury in San Fran with Brandon Ayuk. And then somehow it seems like they're in the doghouse. They're not getting targets. They're not getting on the field. He had that built in. And I say Elijah Moore had that built in defense and narrative with Joe Flacco. Hey, Joe Flacco's a quarterback. We don't know how this offense is going to look and who's going to be the favorite targets of Zach Wilson when he comes back. Zach Wilson has absolutely torpedoed the entire offense's outlook and production. Tyler Conklin was somebody that you could start on a weekly basis and feel good about it in 2 PPR. No longer, even though he did just pop off a huge game last week. At least Garrett Wilson, though, he is getting looks. He did hit over 100 yards last week, but that was a game where Zach Wilson actually threw the ball, got a lot of targets out there, but Elijah Moore was not one of the beneficiaries. If there was a piece you were looking to move, this is another good, like the theme of this show with these wide receivers, they're so similar in regards to not giving you weekly production. But if I had to go through all of them, I think we went in the right order, right? It goes Devontae Smith, who's still giving you some weeks, Rashad Bateman, who is out, but we all like his usage in terms of, route participation being one of the lone weapons there as a pass catching option for Lamar Jackson. And then Elijah Moore, who's just in the crapper and not being involved. But again, if you're not contending, I still would look at Elijah Moore, but it's at a discount. It's moving a player like Kareem Hunt. It's moving a player like D'Onta Foreman, which in the right spot, you're going to be able to get done. So I'm not moving any pieces for Bateman or Elijah Moore that really could appreciate in value. And then you're sitting there 6 months from now, a year from now, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I gave up D'Onta Foreman. I don't know that anybody's going to be saying that. I don't know that anybody's going to be kicking themselves saying, I wish I still had D'Onta Foreman. Almost threw it on Devontae Freeman. D'Onta Foreman on my roster. And you're not really getting the injury discount. Like Rashad Bateman, you get the injury discount. With Elijah Moore, you're not. You're not getting the veteran discount. Hey, I can acquire Hopkins at a somewhat reasonable price, maybe, if a team is in last place and they have him on the roster. You're not really getting that with Elijah Moore because those teams are willing to accept that he's not scoring points, but that's actually helping them get the 101, get Bijan Robinson, who had another monster day yesterday for Texas. Ron, I moved Elijah plus second for Ingram plus Khalil on a contender. Start to tight end tiered PPR. Love it. That I'm perfectly fine with that one as a contender. You're assuming that's a later second. Khalil Herbert, more efficient, more productive, taking over that backfield in Chicago. I would be shocked if they re-sign David Montgomery. He's one of the pieces I mentioned, trying to get him off your roster for any of these guys that people see as struggling assets. I will JB. Not sure what that's in response to, but Khalil Herbert, I have him right around a mid 23 second. And Oh, there's some Fields chat going. I'm like, what did I miss? Okay, I'll let you guys get back to your Fields chat. But yeah, so there's a lot more. And then last one, Eno Benjamin. I went on a buying spree last night. 14 receptions over his last 4 games. Obviously, James Conner was not active. It sounds like James Conner, he's going to give it a go in the 4 o'clock window today, but it's still a game time decision. I would be shocked when James Conner comes back if he gets the workload he was previously getting. And that was a 40% rushing market share and 9% target share. I think both of those drop. And even with James Conner active, Eno was in an 8% target share, 23% rushing market share. So let's say that stays at 8%. We get up to 25, 30% rushing market share. Beggars can't be choosers in this current landscape. And I know, Ron, landscape, that's always my word. But in the way the league is shaping up, that's something that we can't scoff at and can't ignore, especially with all the injuries, all the bye weeks. So Eno Benjamin, and for context, I moved Nyheim Hines in a 4th for Eno Benjamin twice. And this one on paper is disgusting, but I don't think I lost out here. But I was also looking for running back depth, and I had tight ends to spare. I moved Noah Fant straight up for Eno Benjamin in 2 PPR. Again, on paper, that sounds gross, but then I also had that rejected in a few spots. I had Hunter Renfrow plus a 3rd or a 4th rejected in a few spots. Colt Kmet rejected. So a lot of people, now if you notice, I'm not moving a 23-second for Eno Benjamin. If I have him on a team that's not contending, I'm shipping him off for a 23-second, any second, 24-second. So last week I talked about this with Deion Jackson, and somebody said, "Oh, like I don't know if it was should I just look to get him off my roster or throw in or so." I forget the exact phrasing, but I said, "Hang on to him because there is the chance for potential re-injury," and it happened with Jonathan Taylor. James Conner is not the healthiest of running backs. I'm hanging on to Eno, ideally, if I'm contending. I'm bringing on shares because now James Conner is slated to come back, but I still expect some production, even if James Conner is back. And then if he misses more time, he's going to give you that nice floor with, what did I say, 3.5 receptions per game over the last 4 games. And you guys all know I like my backs to catch passes. Last 4 weeks, just under 14 PPR points per game for Eno. That's running back 17. I think the time to acquire is now because James Conner, all the reports coming back, game time decision, like I mentioned. So you might have some people just looking to unload. And this, I did try a 3rd and 4th in a few spots. Those were rejected. So it all comes down to the manager if they're just looking to cash out, not willing to pay a 2nd, but willing to pay a 3rd plus. And those are the ones that I got done. Like I mentioned, Fant for Eno, Nyheim Hines in the 4th for Eno twice. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Any other, start sit, Swift, Cord, Gibson. I need one. Oh, man. It sounds like Patterson is going to be completely, as healthy as running backs can be. I would go Patterson personally. I think they're going to run the ball. They're going to run it often. I think Algier still gets a little bit of work. If Huntley's active, I think he gets a little bit of work, not much. But Patterson, we could see 4 or 5 catches and then 15 carries. And if he finds the end zone, that's going to be a nice play. But I really don't know if you can go wrong with Gibson or Patterson. You all know I like Gibson. So that shouldn't be a surprise. But I'm gonna go Patterson there. And then Jack starts it, Deion Jackson or Michael Carter. I'm going to play Jackson. I don't know if he's going to run the way that people would like, but again, if that's PPR, even half PPR, we could see 5-6 catches against that Patriots defense. And give me those dump offs. That's exactly what you want. Michael Carter, James Robinson, one more week getting acclimated to that offense. And the Jets offense it is worrisome. So give me Deion Jackson. I think he provides a safe floor and he still gives you that ceiling. Yeah. So again, hopefully everybody enjoyed the show. I'll catch everybody in the chat. Any questions, any start sit decisions, trades, you know it. I'll be in there. And thanks for joining live. This was a fun show. Peace.